For multi-bin warehouse management, there is the distribution pack, which is the first one listed here that I'm clicking on now, and then we have bill of materials and work order. The other ones here that you can see that are possible is license plating. That's the ability to use the system with case packs, master packs, and pallets. And then we have our expiration date, vendor lot traceability, giving you the ability to track expiration dates by for your lots and automatically allocate and manage your goods by the expire date. The vendor lot traceability provides the ability to trace raw materials through subassemblies and finished goods. The catch weight system provides the ability to have an alternate unit of measure to sell goods at a weight, and you can sell the number of case packs, and the pricing can be gauged on the standard unit of measure for a weight. The wave batch shipping control provides the ability to automate shipping by giving priority codes to customers, and the system will prioritize inventory to customers. You have a ship complete feature and other features that where the system can gauge which orders to ship. Orders can be batched and included on single pick sheets, and it integrates well with RF handhelds too if you want to do picking not by order but by groups of orders and stage them and ship them. So the rest of the product of where we are is pretty much as you use the system. So for example, when you're looking up inventory and inventory maintenance, or as you do transactions, transaction entry and sales order entry and invoicing. So what we do is we do have some setup screens and then utilities to note that are unique on the menus. So here I'm under inventory and main, and then we provide some inquiry screens here, the multi-bin location inquiry and pallet ID query. And under reports, these are all the standard MAS 90 reports, and then the unique reports that we provide are here below, starting from here on down. And we'll talk about some of those today. Under the setup menu, we start here and on down, and we provide what's called multi-bin options, and here is where we do have options for some of the features in the system. Location, the bin location maintenance, and region maintenance gives you the ability to designate zones in your warehouse and group locations in zones in the warehouse. And then we have pallet ID maintenance and ID type code maintenance, which gives you the ability to use the license plate product for case packs, pallets, and so on. We do have some setup also within warehouse code maintenance and product line maintenance. They give you the ability to turn on and off the system for certain warehouses and certain product lines. And of course, there's some refinements in there for certain features, and I'll talk about some of those. We do have a couple features under, a couple applications under utilities. The recalculate quantity allocated and reconciliation are used as tools to recalculate quantity allocated when you see that the system needs to recalculate those numbers, and the reconciliation tool to ensure that the integrity of the system, if ever questioned, would need to be checked. The initialization tool provides the ability to initialize quantity, initialize inventory to a warehouse or a product line. Typically, that's used at the get-go when you start up with the system, and so unless you turn off a warehouse or turn off a product line, you don't ever use it again. So, but if you did turn off a warehouse or product line, and you needed to initialize inventory, you come in there. This same tool is accessed in warehouse code maintenance and product line maintenance if you were to turn on and off a warehouse or product line. I realize that's a mouthful too, but sometimes if you have any questions on that, definitely speak to us or your reseller. Okay, so to get into this and to get us going into this, and then we'll take a pause to see if there's any questions. I'll start off in inventory maintenance. It's a good starting point because it gives us the ability to view the inventory, transfer inventory, and view transactions that have gone on. I'll access, let me see, some inventory here. And here now I'm on the multi-bin tab, and the multi-bin tab here does give me the ability to view the inventory here in the middle. We get a summarized total here on the left-hand side. We have two options for that in the tree form, by inventory type or bin location type, pardon me, or by region. And region for us in this situation is a zone in a warehouse. So if I were to select the region code, I can get a summary of where my inventory is by regions in my warehouse. Area A, there's 170 each. The BC area, 825. In the main body over here, I can see my inventory, and then on the right-hand side, I have some controls, and we'll go into that. So here, obviously, are my locations where my inventory is. My location type does give me the idea of what kind of, what the purpose of that bin location is. So I have inventory in two primary bin locations. Primary bin locations to our system is typically inventory that has a dedicated bin location for picking. So you can choose to just have it as a priority place to pick inventory from, or you can dedicate it and only pick inventory from there. And we have options in the system to help with that. So for these primary bin locations, and in order to designate a primary bin location, I would click on this button up here. And in here, I can select up to 5 primary bin locations, and then I can designate minimums and maximums quantity on hand that's in that bin location. I can go under reports, and I won't go there now, but under reports, I can run a primary bin location replenishment report. And what it will do is it will look at the minimum quantity on hand and see if it needs to replenish that bin location. It will replenish up to the maximum amount designated here, or, and we'll talk about capacities, or up to the capacity of the location. So if I had this value of maximum of 0, then the replenishment report will try to fill the location up to the maximum amount that you designate as the capacity for that location. So if need be, this information can be imported. The file to import this is the IM404 item location file. In this screen too, since I'm here, are some settings for default regions and aisles that are used for the put away report. And we'll talk about put away, and we'll come back to the screen later. And then some options for overflow. I can designate the minimum quantity for directed picking to necessitate picking out of an overflow area. For example, I have 100 here, and so that tells the system, look, if I have an order for 100 units, to pick it, to shift the order into the overflow area, or direct the picking from the overflow area instead of my regular pick area. The other locations, and we started here at the 2 primary bin locations, is we have some pick locations here, and these to the system are just regular pick locations. If you were to create a bin locations without changing an option, they're always considered as a regular pick location. Here's an overflow location right here. And overflow, like I suggested earlier, can be used as backstock and a way of holding larger case packs pallets of inventory for those orders that you want to pick for picking larger orders, or to rotate inventory from into your regular pick area or your primary, or to rotate into your primary bin locations. In my case, I have a couple staging locations, quality control and receiving. Receiving means that the goods have been received in and haven't been transferred out yet. And staging, quality control, I could be using this for RMA, for example. In fact, if I were to widen this description a little bit, you can see a little SRA, and that says staging area for the RMA module. So that means if I were to do an RMA transaction, I have it set so that it will automatically put the goods into this bin location. It might save time on data entry. It also says disable from sales order. So being a quality control bin location, the goods here are to be locked down and not available for sale, and so those in sales order and invoicing can't see this inventory. Also, the automatic features for directed picking don't automatically allocate this inventory. Also, I can see that, and I'll highlight this just so it's clear, but notice in this sales available column how it's 0. The system picks up the fact that there's no sales available. And you'll see here in a little bit where there's an option in order to reduce the quantity available in sales order for this lockdown inventory, and that's in options. The receive date, the next column over, pardon me, I missed the region. Here I'm just seeing the zones of my warehouse. You can see that I have the locations A10, 20, and 30 in my zone A, or region A, and these other ones in B, C, and so on. And I can use that for directed put away or just to grasp where my inventory is. The receive date here, this does help me age my inventory, especially for non-lot inventory. In this case, this is a FIFO valued inventory. So as I do transactions, I can't select a lot number or a specific item or lot ID or FIFO tier to distinguish it among other inventory in a bin location. So by using the receive date, we have features in the system in order to help age inventory and automatically allocate inventory. So in a minute, you'll see how that when I transfer inventory with this feature on to keep the original receive date, the system can keep that original receive date and use that to age your inventory for directed picking. The quantity on hand, this is my inventory that is on hand. Quantity allocated, this is inventory that may have been allocated for a sales order automatically or manually. It could be also for other transactions like invoicing. If I were to click on this button over here, this would drill down and show me where my allocated inventory is. In this case, since it says SO entry, that's indicating to me that these are orders that have been selected where the inventory has been allocated for orders but have not been shipped yet. As they've been shipped, they might say SO invoice and allocated. If you have other transactions where it's been allocated to, the system would reflect that on the screen. So for example, if I entered a transaction entry but I didn't update it, it will show the fact that it was reserved or allocated to that transaction on here, and this is a good way for me to drill down to that information. So that's the quantity allocated, and that gives me my net available. The other columns over here, the last issue date, that's the last date the inventory did exit the bin location. The counted date, this is the last date the inventory was counted. So we keep track of the last date that the inventory was counted in a bin location and the last date that the inventory was counted at all. And we use that information in physical count. So I'm going to jump over to physical count worksheet and show the selection for that. So if I were to scroll down here towards the bottom here, we provide these two added fields right here, multi-bin location date last counted and multi-bin item last counted. So if I wanted to say, look, give me all inventory that hasn't been counted since a particular date, I could do so something like this. And this will say, select all items that haven't been counted since 2/4/2014. I'll exit this screen for now and to go back to inventory maintenance for the sake of our discussion, and so that we can complete some of these options that we have here. The first one that I talked about over here was the setup for the primary bin locations and so on in zones for directed put away. But here, this option for put and this option for pick, and I'll just click in there so you can see it. But these give you the ability to override directed picking and directed put away for the item. So you'll see that we have options that start at the company level That's under multi-bin options, under inventory and setup, and we'll go in there in a bit. Then you have options to override it for a given product line, and then these are the options to override it for an individual item. So you have 100% control on how you want the system to behave for each item. So we'll come back to that as we discuss directed picking, directed put away. The allocations, I drilled down to that earlier. The detail history, this gives you ability to get transaction history of your inventory and as you process it. So for example, if I were to sell an item out of 2 bin locations, regular Mass 90 will keep track of 1 record to say the fact that one item was sold. In our system, that will be 2 records. In our data, in our history data, we say, well, it came out of this location and another location. You buy inventory, same fact that we keep track of all inventory by bin location. We also keep track of individual transactions, so movements between bin locations, and there's a lot of that here. And actually, there's a lot of other things. We keep track of allocations too. So if you were to allocate inventory on a pick sheet, the system will reflect that here, and it will say allocated a sales order. If you were to clear it, you could obviously see it's cleared, or if you invoice it, and it keeps track of it by sales order for these allocations. There's options up here to whether or not you want to reflect the allocation information, and I could do something like that. And now this is all my real inventory movements. This is a receipt of goods. Let's see if we got something a little better here for, perhaps I have a little better history. Here, I'll back this up a year, display it. Okay, well, I was hoping to see a couple sales out of here, but anyway, the idea here on the allocations part, the sales order allocation, the analysis, if you're ever interested of what's been allocated in the system and then what was ultimately shipped, that's the purpose of keep viewing that data with the allocations. So that's drilling down to the detail history, and of course under inventory and reports, there's a multi-bin detail report which will give you the report form of this information. We provide 2 transfer screens on this screen and bin location maintenance too. In order to use the transfer screen, and I'm going to back up one step here, is I'm going to go under Library Master Role Maintenance and talk about security real quick, and I'll pull up administrative rights. And all the security options that we provide are here under inventory, and we start down here, multi-bin hold inventory and so on. So in order to do a quick transfer in inventory maintenance and bin location maintenance, you give rights to your user, and that's under right here. It also gives you rights in inventory inquiry. So if you have someone that only has inventory inquiry rights but no maintenance rights, this will give them the ability to do a quick transfer from inventory maintenance also. The other options here, since we're here to talk about, give you the ability to put a hold and release on inventory. That's the inventory hold and inventory release here, and we'll talk about what that is later. There's also an add bin locations on the fly, and that's if you're doing if you desire to create bin locations on the fly for cases where you're not committing inventory. So for example, a receipt of goods, and you want to designate a new bin location, or if you want to transfer inventory to another bin location and you want to create that location on the fly, this will provide a pop-up to create that location on the fly. This other one is the supervisor option and should only be kept for so, and this gives the ability to override inventory, quantity allocated, and quantity on hand in the bin location. It's a supervisor only option, rarely ever used, and if anyone did use it, there's a special record that's maintaining the system of exactly who did it. So to exit the security and actually show a transfer, Let me see if I can pull up a good item here that doesn't have too much activity so it makes a little sense of what I'm doing. And let's see here, we have sales order 192. So in this example, what I'm going to do is I have 8 pieces here in bin location B20L. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you under multi-bin options, the option in order to keep track of the original receipt date. If you recall, with the system can keep track of the original receipt date as I move inventory. That's really normally very helpful for items that are not lotted or serialized. So this is the received data set from received finished goods staging, and if that's checked on, that means it will do what I'm about to show you. So this was originally received on 9/11/2013, and I can click this first transfer button, and I got 8 units here, and let's say I move that to C10L, and I hit proceed, and note that it moved my inventory to C10L and kept the original receipt date of 7/18/2013. Now what it will do is move my allocations. Over here, I have 8 pieces that are allocated to the sales order. So in this grid here, note that I have, I can see where it's allocated to the sales order. I can select that and move 8 pieces to another bin location. So let's say I move this to C10L also, like so. And when I move the inventory, notice it increased the inventory and moved the allocations across. If I were to drill down, you can see that the sales order is allocated over here. Why do I do that? If I reserved inventory for a specific sales order, let's say if it was I'm holding that inventory not because I'm shipping it, because I'm waiting on some other inventory to come in, and let's say I move that inventory to another location, let's say from a shelf to a cage, and this gives me the ability to move my inventory and the allocation. It saves a lot of extra steps and it gives you a little extra power on that transfer. So in my case, since I transferred it to another a location which already had some inventory, notice that it picked up the receipt date of the destination bin location. So when I do a transfer into another bin location, it will retain that original receipt date of the inventory in the destination bin location. So then the other transfer that we have here is this box right here, or this checkbox, this arrow right here, and this gives me the ability to select groups of inventory quick. I can select all my inventory using this green button here. I can select a destination bin location like that and hit transfer, and it will move all my inventory across. I can do the same in bin location maintenance. Let's see if I have something interesting. In this case here, there's a lot of inventory allocated. This one's a little better. And here I can do the same sort of thing. I can hit that transfer button. And so in this case, I'm doing transfers from bin location maintenance. Say you're using a bin location as a pallet, and you want to move all the goods from one location to another. I can quickly select all the inventory, or I can just earmark the items that I want to transfer by selecting the right checkbox. Select the destination bin location. Here too, I can do a quick transfer just like I did in inventory maintenance by hitting that transfer button right there. So I'll go back to inventory maintenance. And the last thing to talk about on this screen is this info button. And this provides the ability to do user-defined fields in inventory for your multi-bin inventory. Whenever you create user-defined fields in the way that we've prescribed, they will automatically appear on the right-hand side of this screen, and you can move them on over. This screen provides a nice place to input data, as well as we provide instructions to put the fields in the distribution screens as you sell, receive goods, transfer goods, and so on. I'm pulling up the manual right now to provide a quick guide for us on how to do UDFs, and it's referring, and this is under page 31 over here. So go to page 31. And this provides the instructions here. So if you can sort of tell here, what it's telling you is that you need to create your custom fields in two files. The multi-bin item location UDF field, and you can see the exact file name right here. It's the IM404. Maybe I'll expand this a little bit. Hopefully the quality comes out. So that's the IM404 item location UDF, and then the IM404 bin location history. And the reason we have you do it in the create the field in the history also is that way when you change information or create new information, there'll be a history of that information. So if the information changes, well, for the life of that inventory, it will keep track of the changes in our history file. As long as you create these UDF fields in here, in this file, the system knows that it's related to the multi-bin inventory. So it makes it easy to put it on distribution screens. And I'm going to shift your eyes over here, like purchase order receipt of goods. If I create the fields also in here, it will automatically appear in the screen, in the distribution screen. I don't have to make an assignment. I do have to tell you, though, you do need to go into the customizer screen and add it to the screen. And just select, in my case here, the purchase order receipt of goods field, a business object, and then the fields from there. By doing that, then the system says, oh, I have this information in this UDF file, and it knows to correlate that and display it immediately. There's no other assignment that has to be done. So the purpose of this page in the manual is to guide you on this setup of where to put the UDF fields, and if where you would put it in the files, and if you want to see it in the distribution screens, and then how to add it to that UDF screen that I was showing you earlier from inventory maintenance, and then it's just reflecting down here at the bottom how it appears on the right-hand side of the screen, and you can move it around, of course, in Custom Office. So that said, by the way, there's one more point to this. If you have our add-on for expiration date, vendor lot traceability, and we're keeping track of this information, the UDF information by lot number, then there's added instructions towards the back of the manual so that you can, instead of creating fields in this file, you'll create your UDF fields in our vendor lot file, maintenance file, and it will keep the information unique to lots. No matter which location it is, it will keep that information for lots and the history forever on those lots. Okay, so let me sign out here out of this screen. Oh, by the way, there was a couple overrides in this screen on a few of the fields we talked about, last received date and counted date if need be. So next we'll be talking about bin location maintenance, and then we'll get to selling some inventory. So let me open this up to some questions. I'll pause here for a minute and see if there are any questions. You might say that the donuts in the back were really good or really bad.
Nothing in the question box at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move right along, and let's go to bin location maintenance. I had it up over here, but it's located under inventory, and then setup, and then multi-bin location maintenance. And then earlier, as you saw, that I did the group transfer, and we talked a little bit about that in the quick transfer. Just to create a new bin location, I could do like this, and I'm ready to go. And I'll just sort of show you. Remember earlier I said that the system automatically calls it a pick location, and there you can see how it defaulted that. But to create a bin location, all you need is a warehouse and bin location. If you were to import it, and many users when they're starting off fresh, actually I exited the screen, many users when they're starting off fresh, they will import their bin locations. If you have 500 or 1,000 bin locations, You can easily do that. The minimum information to put in there is the warehouse and bin location, and that will go into our file. In fact, I want to come back into the manual, if I may, around page 111. There's a couple do's and don'ts for bin locations. Let's see if I could get down here. Promise it's here somewhere. Oh, I'm still in 100s, aren't I? Here we go. So page 103, common visual integrator files. And so to import bin locations, you would import to this file. And note that it's saying required fields are the bin location in the warehouse code. If you want to designate a bin location, this is a typo. It says for primary, but P for pick, or V for overflow and staging. And more times, most of the time, users will just import the bin locations, and then if there's some refinements for overflow type and so on. We'll talk about some other fields, but obviously if you have other fields you want to override at a later time, you can obviously do that. Just to talk about imports for one more second, physical count imports, they go into our file, not into the mass90 file, which is the im_physical. It goes into our file. So let alone if you wanted to import a physical, you just supply it the basic information of item, warehouse, lot number, and then supply the bin location if it's enabled for multi-bin. If it's not enabled for multi-bin, leave it blank. That's the only do or don't in the system. And for a physical count, that's all you need to do. It does have a note here, freeze inventory before importing physical counts. So a lot of times when people start off with our system fresh is they'll initialize inventory to one particular bin location or to the existing bin locations that they're set in mass90. And then once initialized, then you can freeze all your inventory, and then you can import your physical count. Or maybe you don't want to import it. Maybe you want to use RF handhelds or just key it in, of course. But then when you update the physical count variance register, at that point it's really a good point to be live, because now the frozen quantities have been shifted into the real counted inventory bin locations. So that was page 103, and I just wanted to highlight those do's or don'ts. Here's some other things here, primary bin locations, and we talked a little bit about importing transfers if you wanted to use a transaction entry to do transfers. And let's say if you're always transferring inventory to a staging location for a certain purpose, that might be handy to just do a VI transfer. Here you can do a sample invoice and sample PO receipt of goods. Although it's not documented here, you can also do bill of material production entry. And of course, you can do work order transactions too. But in those cases, you always select the normal mass90 header object, like the PO receipt header, or if it was the production entry for bill of materials, I think that's the BM_production header. So, and then you'll always see the LL. And we'll talk about some of the automated features in the system, and they apply, our automatic features to automatically set a bin location in there do apply when importing too. So you can designate the bin location here or rely on some of the automatic features we have. Okay, put that away, come back to a bin location. So in the setup of a bin location, a lot of times when users are starting off fresh, it's just nice to import a bin location, say 500 bin locations, get testing with the system in the test company is a great way to do it, and then get the feel of the system, work out some of the new procedures that might be necessary. So, and then at a later time, use the refinements. It's like we have options throughout the system for directed put away. A lot of time users don't worry about directed put away until later in the second phase of implementation. They get live, they get picking with the sales side of things and the inventory management side of things, but directed put away tends to be one of the lesser priorities, and that could be worked out at a later time. So some of the features here are helpful later or now. So so starting off from the left here, we have a region code, which you could designate the zone code, the zones of your warehouse. In my case, I have some zones set for my regular bin locations, my pick locations, and overflow. Note that I have a receiving group. We can designate staging locations like a receiving bin location and give it a region code to group other receiving-oriented kind of locations. So I can have a receiving dock, and I have quality control, or maybe returns, and that way when I produce a report, a put-away report, it will be looking at those all those locations together. But so the region code is set here, the aisle. The benefit of setting an aisle in here is, again, for the put-away, because if you wanted to, the system can be sensitive to where your existing inventory is and try to narrow the inventory to a particular aisle. And here's where it doesn't, oh, pardon me, I skipped sort. Sort code is used to sort inventory in a different orientation. Typically, when you're printing a pick sheet and you print a wave pick sheet, it's printing in bin location order. But if I use the sort code, I can change the sort order, and it will print in any order that I desire. So perhaps when I go around a corner, I want a higher number after the last number of the aisle I'm on, and so that I can go around corners and up and down and so on, utilizing the sort code. And that's very sensitive to the pick sheet, and it's RF handhelds too. The location types here, I can designate a pick location, overflow for my backstock inventory, staging locations for those goods where I pool inventory for like receiving, shipping, quality control because I'm producing goods, finished goods there, or maybe I'm using goods for raw materials and they're coming out of staging location. Floor and other can be really viewed as a pick 2 and a pick 3, and so it doesn't have to be a floor, it doesn't have to be other, and you'll see that you can designate priority picking for those floor and other. So it's really like another pick location, pick 2, pick 3. This allows selection in a sales order. Like my quality control bin location, it has this set on, and with that set on, as you saw earlier for this inventory, that's disabled. It's because this option that's turned on here that makes it disabled, and now it's grayed out, that it's in red there, disabled in sales order. And that way no one in sales order can view that inventory. And here, note here, if I were to go into sales order entry, it works something like this. Here, if I may, I'll hopefully pull up something with that item. Here's some inventory, and I can do a lookup, and you'll note that where is it now? It's quality control, and you'll note that on this screen, note this is the lookup here, and I sort of messed that up, but there you'll note it's not in the lookup, and I can't select that bin location or anything. So we go back to bin location maintenance here, sorry. So I could disallow selection in sales order, which includes sales order, invoicing, and shipping, of course. Manufacturing, I can disable the selection of inventory in bill of materials and work order. The next two options have to do with the put-away report, and this I could disallow put-away to this location, and maybe I'm using it for an alternate purpose, and I don't want the system to view this as a location to put goods away, and that's why I would put a check box. And of course, disallow mix of goods in this location, and that way, on the put-away report, it will try to keep just one item in that bin location. The auto put goods on hold, this allows you to put an independent hold on inventory. So much like if I talked about earlier in security options, security events, where you can give rights. So because I have rights to put goods on hold in security events, note this on the right-hand side, the hold button. and I can put goods on hold just like that. Note I had that clicked, and it put a hold on that. And because I put a hold on it, that will make it so the goods aren't viewable to anyone or selectable and by anyone in the system. It's on hold. Note that it turned back to green, and I can release it. I can also release it with this info button right here, much like the UDF button that I showed you in inventory maintenance. And so I can use UDF, my own fields associated to the inventory, and then immediately release it like that. The system keeps an audit trail when you hold and release, and you know who puts holds and release on that inventory. If I were to come back to setup, just to show you what this option does, this option, if this is turned on, then it automatically puts goods on hold as they go into the bin location. Don't have to have rights just to transfer goods into there. So when you transfer goods, though, with this option on, they'll automatically go on hold. To go on the right-hand side, and I'll just sort of carry on from the bottom, these are new to 5.0, and it gives you the ability to put to lock down inventory for a specific customer number and customer type. Very useful if you're locking down, if you do want to lock down inventory for a certain particular customer. Coming from the top here, these are the capacity settings. And so for directed put away, for the system to know how full a location is, it gives you the power to run a few reports. So let me pull up another bin location. So I went to the first bin location at A10L, and note that I have a 6,000 in the volume field. So I can have a volume factor and or a number of units set. So if I had a primary bin location, it might be useful to say, oh, I can have 100 units maximum in here, and that's number eaches. A standard unit measure, in other words. For using the volume field, it will compute the volume using the volume field in inventory maintenance to compute the total capacity of the location. If I had our license plate add-on, I can designate the case packs and pallet packs and the number of units and the volume factors associated with those to compute the capacity. And that's what these other three fields here. And that's just, obviously, these are date fields. And the last option down here to remove at period end, this is a temporary bin location. And so with this checkbox on, the system will ensure that there's no quantity on hand in the bin location and ensure that it had activity to increase and decrease before it removes the bin location. So that's the setup of a bin location. Once again, it's as simple as you want it to be by putting in a warehouse and bin location. Importing them is useful. Often it's good to set up minimal options to get going with the system, and then use the other fields to help refine the system as you go. So what I want to do is shift over to directed picking and sales order. And the way the system works for directed picking is it will, first of all, a sales order goes in normal, and there's no change to when a sales order does come in. We do give you the ability to allocate inventory right in sales order entry, regardless of the valuation. So that could be good because you want the picker to just select those certain goods that you allocate, or maybe because you allocate to the sales order because you're waiting on other inventory to come in, and you want to lock down that inventory for that sales order. So then we also provide the ability as you print the pick sheet, so you have picking sheet printing, and then the quick print of pick sheets and sales order entry. And with the right options turned on, directed picking will auto-allocate the inventory according to the settings that you put into the system. I'll get in there in a minute. And then the other way to allocate inventory is what we call allocation on the fly. So let's say you just print the inventory on the pick sheet, don't allocate it, and the picker picks the goods. But let's say you'll usually pick out of the primary pick location. There are options to automatically put that location in as you invoice. It tends to be for the situation where the inventory tends to be more exact in the primary bin location, and that way what it's doing automatically will correlate to what's going on. Let's go right into options. First of all, we have this tab over here for directed picking, and as I said earlier, this is the company-wide settings, and you can override this by product line and then by item and inventory maintenance and then the product line maintenance. So if you didn't want to do any refinements, you could just limit your settings in here, and most users do. And then the first section says, do I want to auto-allocate from the primary bin location? So if you have this turned on and you do have primary bin locations and the inventory in there, it will take the inventory out of those locations first. Then when it goes through the rest of your inventory, and I'm going to pull up an item as an example, and then so in this case, I have it set so that the system will allocate from the primary bin locations first, and then it will go through, and then after it depletes the primary bin locations, then it will go through the rest of my inventory. It will look through my pick locations here, and it will go through the oldest one first. So date received, last date received in the bin location in FIFO order, and so that way it gets the oldest ones first out of my regular pick locations. And mind you, these options that you set here carry on to other areas in your warehouse. So for lot serial items, I have it set to the lot serial number. I can do it by the lot receipt date, the expiration date if I had my add-on for expiration dates, and this is LIFO, the last in, first out. And so again, these options help allocate from other areas. So let's say you did like I was speaking about earlier, and you had like a floor area, and you wanted the system to allocate inventory there second. So maybe 80% of your inventory is in the pick location. You desire the system to get it there. But if it depletes your pick area, then the floor location maybe is a second priority. You can say, no, I don't want to pick from there at all. A lot of times that tends not to be practical, but you can. Or you can say, don't pick out of my overflow area. And that maybe what you like to do is rotate inventory out of your overflow area into your pick location or your primary pick locations. And so maybe you desired that it's beneficial not to pick out of the overflow area. And that if you want to include it, you can. This is for staging locations like receiving, and maybe you don't want the system to look at what goods that were just received, and maybe you want to just keep that away, and so it would be a good idea to keep that unchecked. Or if you do want to include it, you can give it like the lowest priority, so then in desperation, maybe pull goods out of the receiving dock. If you desire to pick goods only out of your primary pick locations, I can choose to do that. I can say none and none, and by doing these options, the system will limit picking right out of the primary bin locations only. In this case, I'll set this back to this. The other options here, like least quantity on hand in the bin location, this way, this will naturally consolidate your inventory. Oh, actually, I had it here. This is in FIFO order. The sort code order is if you use the sort code and you want it, and you wanted to go around, you wanted the system to allocate by the sort code in the bin location, you can do that. Say that you use the sort code by weights, and like if you use like a low number for a sort code would be the highest weight first, and you want to go there first. That could be one purpose of doing that kind of thing. So in order to allocate, it's simple as printing the pick sheet. If I go to picking sheet printing, right now this is already allocated. So notice that there's 10 pieces allocated down the line here. I can go to the header screen. I can click this clear sales order pre-allocations, and that will remove all the allocations. It's asking me now, do you want to redisplay the sales order, and I do. And I could show you here there's nothing been allocated. I can choose to print the pick sheets, or in picking sheet printing. In my case, I'm going to print just using quick print here and print my pick sheets, and it will go through the settings that I talked about earlier, and it will print a wave pick sheet. And this wave pick sheet is printing in bin location order right down the line. This is new to 5.0 also, is the ability to print a wave pick sheet right from the regular pick sheets in Mass 90. So in here, automatically allocated the inventory and then presented the pick flow here for me on the pick sheet. If you're using the RF handhelds, the RF handhelds will pick up on these allocations too. The nice point about allocating inventory like this is the picker is directed to pick this inventory, and then as you go invoicing or shipping, let's see, that was order number 192, and then as I go to ship, I'll go shipping data entry in this case, it will pull, might be still in that order, I am, and I'll go back into here, 192. And in this case, notice it defaulted my quantity shipped, and it pulled in all those allocated. So so the picker is directed to pick the inventory, and as long as there's no exceptions, I'm done. That's it. I can print the invoice, go home. If I wanted to, if there were changes in the picking, in what the picker picked, it will notate that on the pick sheet, and then you can make the related changes right here on the screen. I can do something like this. I can display all my inventory, something like that, and I can pull my other 6 units from there. If I'm using an RF handheld, then obviously as I pick the inventory, it can pull that information right into the shipment or the invoice. Another choice with the RF handhelds is if you can pick the inventory and then move the inventory to a staging location like staging or shipping, a shipping dock, and then maybe you want to repackage there at that point. And then what's nice about that feature, and sometimes we refer to that feature as pick and pack, what's nice about that feature is that it takes the inventory out of the bin location immediately, and it still keeps track of that immediately in the other bin location too, and that way you have a good read on what your inventory is by bin location. Maybe you're doing physical counts as you're shipping, that's useful for that, or maybe you want to restock the location. Maybe it's taken 2 or 3 days to ship the order out, and you want to stage goods. So the RF handheld gives you the ability to do staging too. When I look at my inventory, since I selected it there, note it will reflect the allocations. I'll do the drill down and note that for my order 192, here it shifted the goods over here in reflecting the fact that it's invoiced. So these haven't been invoiced. This one has. If I were to look at the detail history, it's telling me what happened here and that I had allocated. First, you saw me clear the allocations. I hit that link on the header screen. I automatically allocated the 10 pieces. Then it moved those 10 pieces into the invoice over here, and that's what it's saying here, this sales order into that invoice. So if I might, let's just do one more example. Let's say I wasn't interested in doing allocations. I'm going to delete this shipment. Let me come back into the sales order here. That was 192. And note that when I deleted that, it pulled the allocations back. It didn't purge it. And what I'll do is I will purge it here. I'll remove the allocations. And in this case, I'm going to print the pick sheets, but I'm going to override the ability to do the automatic allocations. And then what I'm going to do is I'll select the standard pick sheet. And then this standard pick sheet, this gives me a view of my inventory on the pick sheet. So maybe you're more interested in not allocating, but just putting my available inventory on the pick sheet, and I can do that. Yes, we have some rows that may not be interesting to you, but so maybe the pallet ID you can take out, or if you didn't have lot serial goods, you can take that row out. So it doesn't have to be this high. And this one's, and since it's printing all my inventory, it's moving left to right. Note that it excluded the goods that are on hold. I had some goods on hold for this item in the quality bin location and excluded that. But in this case, since I'm printing the available inventory on the pick sheet, the picker will pick the goods. If they don't have a handheld, they can circle it, or if they're using the handheld, they'll select it. And obviously, if they use the handheld and they select it, it will move the information into shipping or invoice data entry. So in this case, since it's not allocated, then when I get to shipping, then I have to select each bin location that it came out of, looking back at the pick sheet. Okay, so let's pause for a minute since we talked about shipping and so much information. Is there any questions?
So far, nothing in the question box.
Now, remember, there's a test tomorrow, so let's be ready for that. If we've got to study at home if we're not ready. Okay, so let's continue on, and then let's go into the directed put-away features of the system. So the alter ego of directed picking, directed put-away. So the way a directed put-away works is it first relies on the capacity of the locations. That's first off important. And in the manual, we do talk about this too, so have no fear. We do talk about it in detail in the steps that I'm about to talk about here. So I designate the capacity of the locations, number one. Number two is I want to set the options that I want to use. So I can go in here in the multi-bin options, and I can go in here to receiving and put away. Now, like directed picking, these are the options that I use for the company-wide settings, and then I can override it in product line maintenance and then inventory maintenance. So the goods here, I can choose with the default area to put the goods, like my regular pick area or the overflow. Some users like to put goods through the backstock area first. What algorithm to use? Last receipt date. Put the goods where I last received it. If I were to select where I have the largest quantity on hand or the least quantity on hand in that area, I can do that. And what it will do is to designate the area at this point is it will look at product line maintenance and inventory maintenance to see if you have any regions or aisles designated. So I can go in here and I can select certain region codes or aisles to where the items should go. So in this case, CNA items, CNA product line items should go in aisle C. And so it will take that parameter and say, I'm going to look to put goods in that area based on when I last received goods in that region or aisle C, pardon me. So then the other options here, and I'm back at multi-bin options, company-wide settings, and I can say disallow put to a location where the same items exist. This is really beneficial for non-lot serial goods, especially if I want to age the inventory and keep track of the original receipt date. And of course, there's an exception for primary bin locations is the next checkbox. Disallow mix of lots in a location, that's self-explanatory. Lean or prefer to goods where the same inventory exists, and it will attempt to do that. If it sees that, it will immediately try to see where the same item exists in that zone. I had the wrong setting here, last receipt date. This option to put next highest location, it uses a certain setting in the system, so it can go between different regions, and it knows which bin location to go next based on the sort code, and it sort of gives us the ability to have two aisles next to each other in zigzag back and forth. It's a very specific feature. Put in the primary bin location if there's no stocks. That means it's allowed to advised to put goods in the primary bin locations, and it would exclude the primary bin locations without this option on. And it will first see if you have existing inventory that can be rotated into your primary bin location. Put goods into the shipping. Here too, the put-away report excludes the staging location set in the system, but it will, with this option on, it will look to see if you have back orders that it can fill and automatically advise to put goods in the shipping dock. The computation is it looks at the total quantity on hand of inventory that you have, less any inventory allocated. And then obviously if you have no inventory, then it will consider that you need to ship some back orders. So this information, along with the setting zones and aisles, if you have that set, and by the way, I should point out, I'm here in product line maintenance. I can override these put away settings, and this is a sample of overriding the directed picking settings that I was showing company-wide earlier. But along with these settings, then I can print a put away report. The way the put away report works is it relies on you receiving the goods in. So I can come in here, and there's the multi-bin put away report, and here I select the staging area to focus on. So I want to look at my receiving bin locations or the receiving group. So I select PO receiving, my source and destination warehouse. And what it will do is it will look at that receiving dock and my receiving group. So here it's going from the receiving bin location, advising, and so on. These quality control bin locations is because it's in the receiving group. So let me shift over here, and I never showed you the staging locations in warehouse code maintenance. But if I were to go to warehouse code maintenance for 000, you can see here I have the receiving dock, and then I have the receiving staging location. So I have the receiving bin location and quality control with this REC in the region code, and that's how it knows to group those together. And then it looks for any inventory that's not on hold and puts that on this put away report. It's looking at the capacity locations and all that business. So the other put away report has to do with the finished goods for both bill of materials and completions, work order completions. And it will look at those settings much like I described earlier. The other way of doing this is on a purchase order printing. So you can print a put away report this way for goods that you have not received yet. Or if you desire to print a put away report based on purchase order number, it will do it this way too. If you were to do it by purchase order number for goods that you've already received, it's not looking at the actual quantity you received. It's still looking at the actual purchase order. And hopefully, I think I do have a purchase order here that hasn't been received yet. And here, and it's providing advisement here, in this case, to put this item and so on into these. And look, it's still trying to fill a back order, and that's why it's advising to put in the shipping dock 75 pieces here. The like picking sheets, just create a new form code and select one of the templates that we provide. I didn't mention it in sales order, but we provide 2 templates, and I printed both templates in my example. But in this case here, I have the template for a put away report that could be used. Okay, so that's sort of the nuts and bolts of put away. Are there any questions? We would be talking a little bit about reports here next and physical count.
No questions so far.
Gosh, okay, I must be doing good. Okay, so let's go to physical count here real quick. So under physical count, I can select worksheet. First of all, I'm going to do a clear and ensure I have a fresh start. In my example here, I can do an example of a nice cycle count. So here I can select, do a count by bin location. I want to print my quantity on hand on my worksheet, and I want to default the quantity counted in my freeze. I can select a range of bin locations, or in this case I will, but I could have selected a zone. Where's my region codes? I could have selected a region, say, hey, give me all my primary bin locations, or so on. I could have narrowed it down by the counted date. If you have my license plate ID, what I could choose to include or exclude case packs and pallets. I could do something like this. I could say if not equal to null, that means it will only give me my case packs and pallets. That not equal to null means that there has to be a license plate ID associated to my inventory. So region, and we talked about the dates and so on. And in this case, I'm doing a cycle count for this range of bin locations, and we can pretend that's all my A bin locations. There's a regular warning in MAS 90 that there's transactions in process. Unable to lock inventory, continue. This is something we provide. Regular MAS 90 is provides that doesn't want to allow you to do a freeze while others are on the system, and this gives you ability to go ahead and do a freeze while users on the system. And then here in my example, I did print quantity on hand, and I'm doing a worksheet by bin location. In my freeze, I go physical count entry, and I can view my inventory. I can use the filters by bin location and so on. In this case, it is in bin location order, and I did default the quantity on hand to my freeze. I can override some quantities. I do have some inventories allocated, and I'm trying to get an exception report to come out as I print the variance register. We talked about importing physical counts earlier. If I were to import my physical counts, they go to our file. So in this case, I zeroed out some quantity on hand in order to persuade the system to give me an exception report, see if I did a good job. So in this case, I have a variance register coming out by item code and then broken down by bin location. It is reflecting my variances. And here's my exception report. And then the reason I'm getting this exception report, and the reason I'm doing this, is that it's telling me that between the quantity counted and the quantity allocated, the system is going to determine that I'm going to go negative on hand if I update this variance register. So the system's looking at the quantity allocated both in sales order and invoicing to compute this. It won't immediately necessarily go negative on hand, but it would go on hand if I update the invoices in sales order or invoicing. So the way to get around this is a call to action. Maybe typically what's happening in our experience is there's inventory allocated on an invoice, and perhaps the counters didn't include that inventory in their counts, and so the counts aren't large enough to account for the inventory allocated on the invoice. But anyway, it's a call to action to review your allocations or what's in invoicing, or if you say no, we know what we're doing, and you still want to invoice as you print, there's this check quantity allocated. If you uncheck that, it will disregard. It won't check the possibility of going negative, and it will go ahead and allow you to proceed with the update. Print the register and update. In count card entry, I can explode. I can select an item, and it says include all locations. If you're familiar with the regular MAS 90 feature, this for lotted inventory, as I select a lotted inventory item, it will say, do you want to include all lots for this location, or all lots for this item, pardon me. In this case, I can include all items here. I can choose to include as much inventory as I want. So coming down to reports now. So the stock status valuation report, great for both the stock status and evaluation report. I can choose my sort criteria, sort and criteria here. I can designate, I can get certain region codes of my warehouse, ranges of bin locations, and so on. I can choose to include inventory that's held, and perhaps that's all I'm looking for, so I can select only inventory that's on hold. There's other features that come up on this screen if you have expiration date add-on, and so that you can choose to include goods by expire date and when good and how soon goods will be expiring. Otherwise, this is a regular crystal report to print, and they could change that. This is the detail report. The capacity report looks at yeah, I had that there. The capacity report looks at how full locations are. So in this case, if I were to go, give me a report of all locations that are 0 to 10% full, and this will give me a report here now of all those locations right now. The other reports here that I have are an allocation report, and this gives me a breakdown of all inventory allocated. And then this space report, space location type report, breaks down inventory, my bin locations, and the setup of them, both for region codes and items, and it helps me ensure that I got completeness in my setup. The replenishment, primary bin location replenishment report, again, it looks at the minimum quantity on hand and a minimum quantity setting in the primary bin locations and the capacity, and it advises the transfers to the primary bin locations to fill it to capacity. The traceability report and the what's issued report are used with the expiration date add-on, and this pallet invoice report is used for the license plate product. So are there any questions right now?
I've got nothing in the questions box.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, then I really appreciate you coming and going through this. Is there, would anyone like NFR, or if you're a reseller, you can request an NFR, or I can also advise, suggest to you that we have other classes in the month for expiration date and license plate. So be sure to check with us on that or the website. So that's the conclusion of today's presentation. We really appreciate you coming in. Email us or call if you need anything, and check our website for other classes. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
The organized